What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to give you all my review of South of Midnight. Now, firstly, I want to thank Xbox and Compulsion Games for providing me a review code for this game. I super appreciate it. I got that deluxe edition early access type deal, so managed to play it a few days ago up until today when I beat it. Game obviously comes out this upcoming week. You can buy it. You can get on Game Pass. Let me just firstly say, before I get too far, my time to beat this was only around 8 hours, so that seems to be like the national average. You go around and you look at the walkthroughs, you look at the reviews and how long they said they did it. 8 to 9 hours seems to be like just the average that I've seen around. And you know, we'll talk about one length type issue, I guess, with this game, but generally I want to put this in the strength category. I think this game knows what it's doing, it knows what it's good at, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. But now, again, we'll talk about some issues that I do have, but generally I think this is a really good length, and I think we need more games like South of Midnight to do things like that. Okay, with that being said, let's go through some of my positives, some of my negatives. Overall, I really like this game, and I would summarize it. I might have done it, in the title, but let me do it, in more words than I'm allowed to do in videos. This is a very good game that has some kind of critical flaws. There are some things this game does extremely well, and I think it picks, right? It knows what it's going to do well, and it goes after those things, and then the weak points of the game, they kind of just left in there. And that's how I'd really summarize it. This is a classic 8 to 10 hour game that excels at 2 or 3 different things and then kind of fails at other things. And that's where this game lands. And, I would still stick to what I just said a couple seconds ago. I think we need more games like this. We need games that are good at a few things, but not everything. Games that can be cheaper. Games that can take less time to make. That's what I think South of Midnight really, along with a couple other things, okay? Hazel, I think, which is the main character. Great main character. I think she's phenomenal. I think the acting in this game, just in general, is super, super strong. There's not that many characters, so it's not like we're talking about, 70 different voice actors that have to, perform. We're talking about a couple. We're talking, honestly, maybe like 5 to 10, characters of note in this game. But you know what? They all excel. And Hazel as a character, I actually think like this, if they wanted to do more, and I mean, there's a lot of lore with this game, and they kind of build up this idea of what she is, right? Which is a weaver. I won't go too much into it. I don't want to spoil the plot of the game, but, they build up this lore of what weavers are, what Hazel is, kind of this history of weavers. And, I think what I'm trying to say here, they leave the door open, I think, to building out this world and that you could potentially do more of it in the future. I think she's a great leading lady. I think she can be the continued, I guess, main character of a franchise if you wanted to make it a franchise. But I think she's fantastic. I think the characters are fantastic. I love the visuals. The visuals are something that jumped out to me immediately, that stop motion-esque type thing. Now, I do think you're either going to be into it or not. But I will say is the design of it is awesome. The visuals, the colors, I think really pop. And one thing that really surprised me is just, again, I was brought in by the stop motion, right? That kind of drew my eye. But when you're playing this game, the kind of like the draw distance, some of the things that are happening, thousands of feet, or maybe let's say hundreds of feet to be more fair, hundreds of feet away from you are astounding. I mean, the lighting in this game is so beautiful. Just some of the designs of the creatures of this game. This is a beautiful, beautiful game. And I thought it was going to be like artistically strong because of that stop motion. The minute-to-minute platforming gameplay, no, some of those things are actually weaker, but the visuals of them extremely strong. The music, oh my dear God, this is a early contender, I would say, for like soundtrack of the year. I don't think they do that at the Game Awards. I do it on my show though, but this is a really good one. I mean, it falls into a repetition. A lot of this game falls into a repetition, so when like the score set pieces are gonna be, but they freaking nail it. And honestly, the idea of this like deep south, like southern lore type thing, right? Like all of these folk tales and again, some of the design I think is based off it. They do really good. I mean, you just don't get a lot of games like that, right? So I think that, artistically it's different. What it's trying to do in terms of these kind of folk tales is different. The Deep South, like, you just don't have a lot of games that do this. So, again, in terms of what they're trying to do and what they did nail, everything that I've just said, the visuals are great, the soundtrack, the acting, the story I do think is actually really good. Now, here, I want to get a little bit into the negatives, and we're going to go into negatives kind of the second half here. The pacing is a little all over the place. I do think they hold it together for most of the game, but there's some times where it kind of builds faster than others. Like the beginning of this game actually freaking rocks. The first half an hour makes you think it's almost going to be like too fast of like an adventure game, and then it really slows down. But when it slows down, it lets those stories kind of, just kind of build up. And I think some of these, like, it's all part of a main mission, right? Every level you go through and you generally do the same thing. You're fighting, you're platforming, you're finding notes around. So like each level will have 12 notes or it'll have 8 notes. And it's telling the story of what you're doing in that area, right? So there'll be a conflict, there'll be some controversy, that happened, and you have to resolve it. Hazel has to resolve it through this Weaver, ability that she has, and everything kind of plays into it. So the notes are playing into that story. You'll meet 1 or 2 characters, and they'll kind of have their background, and that plays into that story. And then it's part of a larger story, right? So like each level is kind of its own little side quest type thing, but it builds into the main story. And I think all of these side type things extremely good, much darker than I thought. Now, I mean, like folk tales and stuff, they can get pretty dark. I didn't know it would go into it's some serious stuff. And I think honestly they handle it super, super well. They're telling stories, they're telling experiences, and I think it's strong. Like I was not expecting to be like, oh wow, they're talking about, I don't want to even spoil it, to be honest with you, because these themes, again, and the way they handle them, I think they just do it very maturely and very well done. And Hazel plays into that, which is how she acts and all that jazz. So they do a really, really good job there. And the main story is very good too, like the main thread that's going through the entire thing. The one negative I'll say with the main story is it ends very quickly. So there's 14 chapters in this game, and the final 2 are very uneven. The final chapter is maybe like 5 minutes, and then the 13th chapter is basically a boss fight. So, and that's it. So the resolution to the story happens, no joke, over maybe like a 3 to 6 minute cutscene, and that's how it just resolves the entire thing. Way too quick. So I think overall they had it, and overall they have the smaller moments, and they have the emotional beats, and they had the character growth, and all sorts of different stuff. They were nailing. Then at the very end, they kind of said, okay, well, we ran out of time. I don't know what the excuse is, but there has to be something, because they went so quick at the end, and it just didn't feel right with how the rest of the game went. So that was one issue. And now there's 2 other problems, and you might have seen this online. And again, it's to my point of what I said earlier in this video. The game excels at a couple things, and we've talked about those things. It really fails at a couple other things, and there's 2. The combat and the gameplay. I guess we could separate it. Combat meaning like literally the fighting. When I say gameplay, I guess I just mean the platforming. It is highly repetitive. You have done it in games potentially thousands of times in your life, okay? There's nothing special about it. It's animations you've seen before in other games. Like everything is reused, okay? So the platforming is just there to get her from point A to point B and extend levels a little bit. I'm not going to flip out too much, but I'm not going to call it a strength, right? I'm not going to flip out and say, okay, the game's a 2 out of 10 because the platforming's bad. The platforming is what it is. It's not strong. It's not the strongest part of this game. It's a weak part, but it's serviceable. It does what it needs to do. The combat, I really don't know what we were doing there, okay? Originally, the combat reminded me of Banisher's Ghost of New Eden, another game that had the aesthetic, the tone, the characters, the story, the visuals, but, the gameplay was kind of a discount God of War thing. Now, the thing with Banishers is the gameplay still kind of rocked, okay? The gameplay was still kind of good in Banishers. This one felt like that originally, where it's like, okay, this is a thing you'll do every 30, 40 minutes, and you'll do the gameplay, and then you can, do the rest of the game. The issue is the combat, okay? The actual fighting. You do so much in this game. Every level, you're going to have to fight between maybe 4 to 10 times, and it's always the same thing. You go into a bubble, you face a wave of enemies. There's maybe 5, and I want to try to count it in maybe 6 enemy types in the entire game, and you're introduced to most of them in the beginning. So for 8 hours, you are largely facing 6 enemies, maybe 100 times, and it's just so limiting. The combat is so limiting. There are abilities, and you can level it up, and by the end of the game, I will say this, you feel more powerful at the end than you do the beginning, okay? So there's definitely like a gameplay growth as well. It's just way too repetitive. It's not like responsive enough. And I'll tell you this, if I need to pinpoint almost exactly what has gone wrong here, I would actually say it's the unweaving kind of thing you have to do. So when you destroy any enemy, they all have life bars. You take their life bar to 0, and then you have to press Y every single time to every single enemy. So you'll take out 10 enemies, but they're not done until you walk over to them and do this quick little cutscene that's the same animation 1,000 times, as many times as you actually have to destroy an enemy. It just that is one issue, and I think that probably is the biggest issue, but it just breaks up the combat way, way, way too much because it's already not fluid. The combat is not fluid. There's no blocking or parrying. There's simply dodging, and there's almost like a perfect dodge that I do actually kind of like, but it's not fast enough and responsive enough to be like super addicting or entertaining. And then every 20 seconds, it's breaking itself. It's stopping so you can do an animation to do like a final blow on an enemy, but you're required to do a final blow. They just won't die. They won't die if you leave them alone. You have to go up to them to do the finishing move. So that is a like massive mistake. Whoever came up with that, never do that again in your life. And that's the biggest thing. So while the actual like parkouring and getting from part A to part B, that's fine. You know, again, you have done it before. I guarantee you've platformed like this before. And that's fine because it's serviceable. The combat is not fine. Okay, this is what I actually, if I said this wasn't bad, I would actually lean this more towards bad. Okay, it gets old. You do it in the first hour, and you do combat maybe 3, 4, 5 times, and you say, okay, if I had to do this every half hour, it'd be no big deal. But the issue is, and I'm not kidding, you probably have to do it 100 times. And I mean, if you did it 20 times, it wouldn't be so bad, but you get bored of it. I got bored of it. I don't know about you. You and I could be different. This got stale to me after, no joke, an hour. And then I had to do 7 more hours of it. Now, the bosses are cool. Visually, they're awesome. And I would actually say the design of it. Each boss kind of has its own thing to it, whether it's dodging attacks or just doing something a little bit different to attacking them. Final boss was actually massively disappointing because it's just dodging projectiles and then still fighting the same enemies that you fought the entire time. And that's how you kill the boss, is by fighting the base and like the grunts. Don't know why they did that. That really takes away the stakes of the final boss. But, again, this is not the strong suit of the game. Okay, so honestly, I mean, that's where I'm at. This is a solid game. In fact, this is a strong game. I actually really like this game, and I feel like I'll still be talking about this game throughout the whole year. I think when I do my own Game of the Year awards and I'm talking about games that kind of surprised me or stood out in a couple different ways, South of Midnight is one of those. It really is probably, I don't do scores, okay? Don't want to do it. I don't like scores, and that's my choice, okay? But this is honestly a classic 7 out of 10 type game. Because in my opinion, a 7 out of 10 type game is a game that does a couple things very well, and it kind of picks its battles, and then it's weak in other areas. And that's what this game is to a T. It excels at the story. It excels at the characters. It excels at the visuals. It excels at the music. That's 4, right there. You can maybe even break things up and make it 5 or 6 things it's really, really good at. But then you're playing it. And when you're actually moving around, that's just serviceable. So that's like an okay thing. And then the fighting part, you are doing for 60% of this game, and that's a lot of the game to have a pretty weak thing happening. So that really, if I were to give it a score, I can understand why sites gave it a 7 out of 10, because it's good at a lot of things and it's very weak at other things. And that really encapsulates, I think, what this game is. But still, I think a game worth checking out. To be honest, if you have Game Pass, do it. Absolutely do it. To buy it, I think it's worth it. To be honest with you, again, these are games that I think I want more of. Games that take 10 hours, games that are good at a couple different things, and you'll remember them for those couple things. I will remember South of Midnight for those couple things, and I'll say, yeah, you know what, the gameplay wasn't very good, but the rest of it was really good. That's what I'm going to remember South of Midnight for in 5 years. And to have more of those games versus 100-hour bloated open world games, I think I want a couple more of these ones. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.